There aren't many games that when announced I instantly get excited for. Outside of some staples like a new Resident Evil, Final Fantasy, Persona, or Zelda game, I tend to see games and think, oh, that looks interesting, or I think I'll pass on this one. In the case of Eternights, it was the former. But to be honest, I completely forgot about the game as life went on. But then, out of nowhere, I got an email. And this email was from the marketing of the game asking if I would be interested in playing a preview of it. At first, I wasn't sure what this was, as I didn't apply for anything regarding Eternites, and yet here it was. So, I agreed to check it out. And I'm happy to say I'm glad I did. So, here are some obligatory disclaimers. While the company did allow me early access to playing the beginning of the game, my thoughts and opinions are my own, and they are not sponsoring this review. With that being said, as far as first impressions go, this one hits hard. This early preview only allowed me to play through the first 2 acts of the game, but it was enough to give me a sense of how the game plays. The developers have been marketing this game as being influenced by Persona, specifically Persona 3, 4, and 5. And you can clearly see the influences in how Eternights has a dating sim aspect to it, similar to how Persona games have the social links. Though it's not as in-depth as the social links, I think it works better for how this game is built. Where the Persona games are much heavier on character interactions requiring you to balance your decisions through the day, Eternights, so far, seems to be less about keeping a schedule and in return, less punishing for not having everything organized. But your choices and dialogue do make a difference with your characters as you build a relationship with them. And while the Persona influences are clearly felt, they also don't seem to drive the game, so it doesn't feel like I'm playing a Persona clone. And again, this plays to a strength. As much as I love the Persona games, and am an avid collector of Persona and Shin Megami Tensei, the Persona games seem to have the same problem. They all have bad pacing in the beginning of the games. Persona 5 does this a bit better than 3 and 4, but the long periods of exposition between exploration and combat slows the pacing down to a crawl. Eternights doesn't seem to have this problem, though it did make me think it was going to with how it began. But the action and story quickly ramps up within the first 10 minutes of playing this, and the way the pacing seems to be done works very well. Going from exposition to exploration and action flows well enough where I never felt bored like moments in Persona games where they tried to cram an hour's worth of exposition between other moments. Instead, the flow of this game seems to go with 5 minutes of exposition to 20 minutes of exploration and combat to a cutscene and back to exposition and rinse and repeat. Combat is also fast-paced as it is an action RPG instead of a turn-based RPG like its influences. And with it being action-based, you have different abilities that are mapped to different buttons. You have a basic attack, heavy attack, and special abilities that you can perform once you meet those criteria, such as combo finishers, death blows, and more. There is also a dodge button, and if you time it just right, you can perform a perfect dodge, which slows down time and speeds up your attacks. The combat is flashy, fast, and I love it. Among all this, though, is something that stood out to me more than anything else. Because while the game may be influenced by Persona, it does have something that Persona doesn't really have much of, and that is horror elements. The game is heavy on horror elements and themes, and it's not afraid to show you that from the very beginning. To where the main character has a horrific dream where he gets his arm cut off, and then it actually happens. And when these moments come, they surprise me as I would never have guessed that this is where it was going to be playing out. Eventually, I started noticing other things that began to remind me more of games like Silent Hill and Parasite Eve, and I welcomed it with open arms. The enemies in the game are humans who have transformed into these misshapen creatures that are out for blood. The body horror is heavy in this game, from some of the people having grown a second head or face to others having extra arms or even multiple bodies in one body. There was this one encounter where I noticed it had two people fused together with a predominant female figure in the middle as she had her arms wrapped around her breasts. Again, this was not something I was expecting to see in this type of game. The game was not afraid to lay into this horror too, as one moment you're sneaking past enemies and the next you're running for your life in an intense chase scene with an enemy of a human that has been transformed into what looks like blades. You can't kill it, you can't sneak past it, only run frantically down a long hallway while trying to avoid obstacles in your way and praying you don't take a wrong turn. It was these moments that made it less Persona and more Evil Within, and I loved every minute of this. After I was done playing what I was allowed, I just sat there, trying to understand what I had just played. It was surprising, but in a way I hadn't felt in a long time. Even though there were so many familiar things to this game, it was so unfamiliar that it left me stunned and wanting more. I even reached out to my contact asking for more because what I had just played, I was absolutely blown away by it. And I haven't even spoken about the aesthetics of the game, which are beautiful by the way. The only issue I have with the visual presentation is that the character design seems a little bland. And those who are familiar with Shin Megami Tensei will understand this example, but it reminds me of how the characters were designed in Devil Survivor on the DS, where those characters were a little bland in design, but it didn't matter because the game itself was phenomenal. And this definitely applies here. Where I was first introduced to this game at Sony State of Play in June of 2022, this little gameplay experience is really what solidified this game to me. And I need to play more of this. And for sure, when this full game is here, I will follow up this review with a full game review. And with all of that, thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this review, hopefully you check out some of my other reviews I do here on the channel. As I play a ton of different games, odds are that I've covered something you enjoy as well. And if that's the case, I hope you hit that subscribe button. And if you want to take it one step further, you can hit that join button and become one of my members. All of that helps to fuel my ever-growing addiction to gaming and allows me to keep playing and making more videos for you all. But even if you don't, I still really do appreciate you watching this and enjoying the game with me. And with that, happy gaming.